All right. So we're back, and we're going to be doing some Endgames today because we're getting ready for Nationals, and you guys are bad at Endgames, especially after the Turkey Bowl and seeing some of these Endgames. We're going to need to look over a few. And, I can see you trying to hide your face right now. I would, too, if I played Endgames like you did. So, so we're going to look at a handful of positions and break down the elements of it. And I will say, and hopefully it's not like a copyright infringement thing, I'm not showing every position in the book, and I'm not going to be doing his explanations and stuff like that. But we're using Carsten Mueller's Fundamental Chess Endings. It's a great book. It's definitely one of those go-between texts. When you look up Endgame text, Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual pops up. But that's a book for extremely serious and strong players. That's the work that I personally need to go through Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual myself in order to get stronger as a chess player at this point, as a master. So any basic Endgame books will do to start with studying Endgame. But this one, it's like a lot of moves, not a lot of explanations. But it's really, really quality examples. So you'll see what I'm talking about. And right here, you have a situation where it's white to move and draw. Now, you need to be able to look at this position and understand one key element, and you'll be able to draw this position from now on. If you don't understand the key element, you'll lose. And typically in tournaments in the United States, when we get low on time, that's when the end game hits us. And you need to know. You don't have time to think and figure it out here or calculate everything out. I'm going to give you a little bit of time here, but that's typically not going to be the case, which is why we need to do this type of work in advance. So, what would you do for a Klondike bar? All right, so white to move. King E2 loses. I'm pretty sure King E2 loses. Your king is on E1.
D1. King D1. King D1.
King F2.
King F2 100% loses. You're going the opposite direction of the pawn. What are you doing?
D2.
Also loses.
King.
King D1.
King D1. Good job.
That was so explanatory one.
Shut up, Jackson. You copied my answer.
Okay, now, for everybody who got it wrong, I want you to understand why. Notice at this point, it's about distant opposition. So if I start with King D2, I have the direct opposition. Now it's very clear there's nothing white can do. The pawn ushers forward. So we got that? And this is how easy it is. Now, if you step up to either of these squares, black will step up and get the direct opposition and then body you all the way to making a queen. So you need to be the one with the opposition. So after King D1, if he steps up either way, we step up. And notice the difference. White is the one. When you are stepping in front of them, you are taking the opposition. Opposition is the most powerful concept in king and pawn endgames. Because now, no matter what he does, we now have this extra theme. When he pushes the pawn, okay. Now, key moment. Again, concept of opposition. Do we go to C1 or do we go to D1?
D1.
Boy.
You lost.
Boy.
Remember,
D1.
another technique is
We go to C1.
I was gonna say that.
We go to C1 so we can if he pushes his king, you can get opposition.
Okay. No sidebar conversations. Focus, because it's important. Because if a 1600 will mess this up, anybody under that will mess this up. So I want to make sure you guys are understanding it, because we've been through this before, but, it's 50-50s. If I've beaten 2 A players in tournament play by getting to a drawn position like this and shuffling my king around, until the guy stepped on the wrong square, and then he loses. So you have to have pure mastery of this to make sure you don't get it wrong. So if you go to D1, you get forced out, and you lose. That's why it's so important here. You step back. So when he steps up, I have the opposition again. And you get stalemated and you draw. So these are very, very basic elements of king and pawn endgames. So it all revolves around the opposition. So king d1, very important. Opposition, opposition. And I'm just following him around. Now I'm going to stay in front of the pawn. Now you want to go straight back. So anytime his king steps beside the pawn, you want to step right in front of him to body him. That's the opposition. So we want to go straight down, stay in front of him, and we get stalemated. Okay? So we got it overall. Basic concept. Next, we're going to look at a few of these. And I may not need to use the book for the first few because I can figure it out intuitively, but I may have to thumb through when we get to a certain point. So this position, it is white to move and win. Now, this is one of those stupid things about king and pawn endgames. Let's see if you guys can figure out what to do and calculate. This is a calculation problem. So see if you can figure out what to do. It is white to move in the position. Zach?
Maybe C4.
That draws. Uh-huh.
King E2.
That draws. Uh-huh.
C2.
Maybe. Okay, king C2, king E7.
And then king B3.
King D6.
King B4.
King C7.
King C5.
King C7.
There's already on this.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, that'll win. All right, so you got the opposition. But notice Hilbert's line, he went around the pawn in order to make sure you're getting one of the key squares. Notice in the last position that we looked at, if the king is controlling from the side 3 squares, and one of those squares is like the next square up, that means you can usher your pawn forward, and the other king can't do anything. Opposition is about bodying you to make sure that you can't go past. But if you're to the side, you have more space control. So keep that in mind. Now here, logic and intuition tells us from all of our experience in life that the fastest thing between 2 points is a straight line. So many people will go straight forward with the king. And you draw. Because if I start going straight up, and then, so if I go king d6, that's a landmine because white gets the opposition, right? That's why I'm going to go king d7. And now, any way white moves, it's going to be a draw from this point. See the opposition again? And it's straight back, opposition, draw. So let's see the difference. When you go to C2, I mean, there's nothing much you can do here. White gets the opposition. And see what I was talking about when pushing forward? It goes all the way. All right. So, if you have time on the clock, And I mean, one of my advice things that I give to my students until you guys get to the point where you can calculate really well, which is about 2,000, is try to avoid king and pawn in games if you can. Because unless you're like a clean pawn up and a king, multiple king and pawn in game, you can probably win that. If it's like a double pawn or something, it can be a draw or even a loss. But 2 pawns up, king and pawn in game, sure, trade down, go into it. But a lot of these basic king and pawn in games, you can see how difficult they are just to even understand the basic concepts. Try to avoid it. Keep your last rook on the board. Keep tension. Keep that last piece on the board, etc. But everybody understand this example that you need to check paths that you wouldn't normally intuitively look at. The fastest thing may not be the direct line with king and pawn in games. Next, the person to move gets what they want. If it's black to move, it's a draw. If it's white to move, he wins. So, let's see the bodyage. And the difference is, one of our squares is already controlled for us. So when I step up, because of that, we have control over these squares, forcing him. And always having control over that makes a good bit of difference. Now he's got the opposition, right? But I said this is a win.
Yes.
So how do you win this?
You do king, king, that's h6, king h6, king h6.
H6?
Push the pawn. Push the pawn again. King h7.
And you queen the pawn. So it's important to know that sometimes opposition won't even save you when the king's in the best position, because you're still controlling key squares. The corner is different than anywhere else in the board. So coming back to our starting position, I wish there was a simple way to click it with black to move, but if black moves here, notice how if white sidesteps, I just sidestep. I'm never going to let him step up. So see how I'm just bodying him to make sure that he never can do anything? We'll just we'll run all the way around, because now my pawn is helping. And if white's king steps back and I win the pawn, the difference is white can give up the pawn in a way to get opposition and then make the draw. Where it's white wins, black can only draw even if he wins the pawn here. Everybody following this concept? Because there's more squares in order to triangulate. Black doesn't have a lot of options to be able to triangulate. Yeah. Next. This is one of my favorite king and pawn in games. It's called the trebuchet. So, this is white to move. Yeah, Zach, go ahead.
King g6.
King g6, and if I go king e4, go ahead, calculate it. King g6, king e4.
I can't go king g4.
You can go king g5 though.
King G5.
Okay, so again, counterintuitive. The fastest way is a straight line, right? No, because if you go here, you actually lose.
L.
And again, I'm showing the technique each time, just so it sinks in. So here, the best move is actually king g6. So he has to defend the pawn, and then we go king g5, bye-bye. And he's trying to get back around to get in front of you, but you control that next square up, which is so important. I don't know. Yeah. It's definitely our canoe friend. And then the pawn goes. So, I believe that was all the examples I had for part 1 of the Endgames. I just wanted to hit on that key concept of opposition. So, that's that.